Yeah, you'd be lucky to go on a date with Jose Mourinho, mate.
At the end of it, I won't think he's a massive wanker anymore.
Every time she's on TV, her name is trending.
Hello and welcome to the Midtable Up Podcast. On this episode, we're going to be discussing probably a more personal list than the previous episodes as we rank our top 10 figures in football that we would like to meet. Please do comment down below. Let us know the 10 footballing figures you'd like to meet the most. Whilst you're there, you might as well put your foot through the like button and subscribe, as well as follow us on Spotify and Apple's podcasts app. My first co-host joining me today is somebody that nobody should have the misfortune of meeting, as the most people that do meet him think he's a prick. It's Matthew Lee. You alright, Matt?
Hello, mate.
What an intro.
What an intro. I prefer the word socially challenged than prick.
Yeah.
But I'll take it.
Yeah, no.
Cheers, mate.
It was about as kind as what I could have come up with, to be honest with you.
That was your kind option. I want to know what your harsher options were.
You'll have to see next Tuesday for that one, Simon. My second co-host discussing with us today is very good with first impressions, so much so that when he once threw up on the back of a girl in a nightclub, he was able to convince her that it wasn't him. It's our resident tractor boy, Simon Bartlett. You alright, Simon?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that with the public.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're more than welcome, mate.
No.
You're more than welcome.
I would have got away with it too if it weren't for my friend next to me. Bloody messed it up. I was so convincing that I would have got away with it, but then someone was like, "Oh, I think it was you." I was like, "I know it was fucking me. I did it. Of course it was me."
I thought you had got away with that, to be honest with you. So, yeah.
Well, no, I would have done if someone next to me hadn't given the game.
What a cock.
Anyway, I was fine.
Yeah.
Puked and rallied. Back in the club. On we go. Good lad. Let's carry on. Let's crack on with the pod.
We never leave a man behind on this podcast. And finally, I am your final host, George Ellis, a man that once caused the legendary Sir Trevor Brooking to actively avoid him after spending 45 minutes in his company watching a football game with him. So, we're all kind of pricks on this podcast, really.
Your intro was definitely the least bad again.
We need to do something about it.
Okay, well...
Because every time...
You basically called Matt a cunt and told him about me throwing up on somebody. Yours was like, I irritated a guy for 45 minutes.
But it was Sir Trevor Brooking, in my defence,
Nah.
But, yeah, well, I say irritated. I'm just going to clarify, he was a gentleman while sitting with me, to be fair. And then after 45 minutes, I probably don't blame him for going back to his actual seat because, yeah, it was just me going...
Is that the tolerance for George?
Basically, yeah, 45 minutes. We shouldn't go over that on this podcast, really, then, on that basis. But yeah, who wants to kick us off with their lists? I'm interested to see what the sort of thought process was for people coming up with this one, because this was quite nice. I'm going to be honest. It made a nice change, sort of thinking, I don't have to really think about facts or whatever. It's just purely opinion-based, this one.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting bit for me was deciding whether it was like someone you'd like to talk to or somebody you thought would be a good night out. Like, that was kind of what I was balancing on, like, a few of these. It's like, I'd love to talk to him, but he would be a bit boring.
Yeah.
Him, it might not be that interesting, but it was going to be fun. We're going to have a good time. Okay, my number 10. I cheated a little bit because I have technically met him, but I would like to sit down and chat with him for longer. And I can tell you the story of how I met him because it's quite good. But it was obviously, with that introduction, as the resident tractor boy, that it was probably going to be an Ipswich player.
Oh, I'd expect nothing else, yeah.
It's the current town captain, Luke Chambers, legend of the club. Been there nearly 10 years now. Ingrained in the roots of that club these days. He houses youth players at his house. He basically runs the team. Loud vocal skipper, and I'd love to meet him. He's a very solid guy. And when I did meet him, so I went to an away game, Ipswich v Gillingham, and I was getting the train back to Essex at the time, had to go in through London, and he was sat on the same carriage as me, along with about 40 other Ipswich Town fans.
Wow.
So he did not have a very relaxing trip home. He just won the game 1-0. He had all the fans chanting in his face for a solid hour on the train back to London, which I can't imagine he particularly enjoyed. But yeah, so we were chanting one fucking Chambers at him. And he was such a good guy about it. Like, he took pictures with everybody.
That is really good.
But anyway, the reason why I'd love to meet him is because I would love to know his kind of all the behind-the-scenes stuff of, particularly in this era of the club, which hasn't been particularly good.
I think that's the understatement of the year, mate, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so obviously relegation. But, I mean, some good moments when we made the playoffs, but then the whole issues with Mick McCarthy and then some stuff with Paul Hurst. I would love the inside track of how he as the captain feels, what really happened. I bet there's so many good stories behind the scenes of what really went down, and I think we probably only heard 20% of some of those stories, so I'd love to just get his view on what stuff like that was like.
Oh, definitely.
Most of the time you don't ever see footballers out in the wild. Like, you might see them at an event.
Yeah, not in this.
Kind of going
not in this day and age. You don't really, unless you are lower league, really. So that's one of the only few times.
I'll be honest. I don't think he'll do it again.
Yeah, he's learned.
He's learned from that lesson. He's not going on the train next time.
His club captain, Ipswich can't give him his own car. I don't know, but
well, I presume he came up on the team bus and then went somewhere else on his own. But yeah, it was so surreal because I was late getting the train. I was just like, hang on, I know you. And then it spent the whole journey back just chanting Ipswich songs at him, which I can't imagine is particularly fun. But it was fun for me, and it, as I say, he took it in good spirits.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've really got to embrace that kind of thing, especially when it's positive after a good result. So, yeah, no, that is a really interesting story. And I kind of get what you mean because, one of the people on my list I have already met, but it was very brief and it's not quite the same as if you were able to sit down with them for even any kind of length of time, really. So, yeah, it's I can definitely get where you're coming from in that regard, mate, for sure. And as you said, as you alluded to, having been there 10 years, a lot has gone on at the club in that time period. As you said, the whole Mick McCarthy escapade thing. It would be really good to try and hear, his side of the story in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who think that he's kind of bigger than a lot of the managers we've had, and he's got so much influence behind the scenes that people really struggle to deal with him. But again, that's all speculation, and it would be good to hear kind of his views and how much influence the players had in various situations, and whether he feels he could have done anything differently to try and make certain things not have happened, which obviously is a club we didn't want to, obviously with the relegation and the like. So,
Matt, do you want to hit us with your number 10 then?
Yeah, I mean, my number 10 is a bit of a different. Again, it's that what do you want from someone, and so for me, my number 10 is Neil Warnock. It's again very different choice, but what a character! Someone who's been around football for his whole life, and been an instrument and really seen the game develop. So personally, for me, he doesn't get high up in the list, 10th, but he's in there, and I feel like just listening to some of the stories about his experience growing up and stuff would be interesting, and as well as his interesting managerial policies. To say the least.
We're playing 4-4-2 because that's Neil Warnock.
It wouldn't be a pint. It would be more like a cup of tea round your nans.
Yeah, I mean, obviously being kind of, I've seen a lot of Neil Warnock over the years, because obviously he's spent a lot of his time in the Championship with Ipswich, so I've got lots of experience going up against Neil Warnock teams, and he's always good value.
Yeah.
You notice his presence. There are certain managers on the touchline, you just kind of sit down, write notes. Him, he's there.
Yeah.
You're always seeing him. You'll always notice him. He's definitely in the building. Warnock is here. The one time I remember was we played Cardiff, and Sol Bamba got sent off, and Neil Warnock went ballistic at him on the sideline. That was a cracking day out. Town won 2-1, so that's obviously helpful. But yeah, as I say, you're right. I mean, he's managed so many different sides as well. Kind of Sheffield United, Middlesbrough, Cardiff. I mean, he's been around everywhere, so he will have so many stories of people he's met, and I reckon he could fill probably 2 or 3 books with stuff that he's done in football and stories that he's got about his career. Particularly management. I don't really know about him before his management career? I assume he was a player. I don't really know.
Yeah. No, he was a player. Yeah, he was a player, definitely.
As a manager, that's what I'd be most interested.
Oh,
in
definitely.
About like some of those promotions that he's had, particularly the Sheffield United team that got promoted and subsequently relegated by certain Carlos Tevez.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting one to get his views on that. I would like to listen to that story.
I feel like he'll probably get his views on his gravestone on that one. I think we all kind of know where we stand with that. So my number 10, I have decided to go with who I think is the GOAT, and that's Lionel Messi. And to be fair,
number 10.
Yeah, well, the only reason why I put him at number 10 is probably because I don't think he speaks that great English. So,
so George, how is your Spanish?
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
But it'd be really cool to meet him, I think, because obviously it's Lionel Messi. You think of what he's done in the game. You think of the calibre of player he is.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable stuff.
He's alright. I've heard he's alright.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Decent left foot.
He's got a decent left foot.
He's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was basically why I went with. Messi.
The only thing I would say, would you think Messi would be like a lot of fun? I don't because I know he's quite. I don't know. Seems quite quiet and quite. I don't know if he'd be very forthcoming.
A little bit. I kind of get where you're coming from with that. I'm not too sure. To be honest with you, I'd kind of just even if it was just a sit down chat for 5-10 minutes. That's
you just stare at him the whole time.
Pretty much. To be fair, he has gotten.
I think it'd be worth it.
Yeah, no, he's gotten way more handsome over the years. You go back like 12 years or so ago. He didn't look all that, but yeah, he's definitely more handsome now.
George, it's the beard. Any man with a beard automatically adds
100%.
like 2 points to your attractiveness.
That's what we were just me and Simon were talking about it, and he's got the beard. He looks like 1,000 years younger. He looks like baby Messi again. It's weird. I don't know why he decided to shave. Probably because he's got some job interviews coming up. But
possibly, yeah, he just wants to give him a good impression.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he wants out of Barcelona, so maybe that was his hint to say he's on the market.
Possibly,
shave the beard.
exactly.
Yeah, shave the beard,
he's going to have a new Tinder profile up and running soon and everything,
I'd swipe on him.
Oh, mate, 100%. But yeah, as I said, it's just a language barrier thing.
I reckon his English is pretty decent. I don't think there's any way he's had the career he's had without learning enough English to get by.
Yeah.
Like, he's played at World Cups, he's played it all over the place.
Yeah, he has, but he's never played in England or anywhere that's...
No, but he will dealt with English media probably enough times to... And he's a brand ambassador for like Nike and people. Like they wouldn't do that if it was like no English.
But they probably just put a script in front of him, and he probably just has a translator on set that says, "Yeah, pronounce it like this," and then he just goes, "Okay," and then he forgets about it. That's what I would imagine. I do know what you mean, because obviously he's got great sponsorship details, but even seeing him things like the Pepsi Max advert and the Adidas stuff that he does.
I love that advert.
That was a great advert for the 2010 World Cup. But even in those adverts, you don't really need... Yeah, but you don't really need Messi to speak. You kind of just need him to turn up, wear the shit, kick a ball, and then go home. You don't really have him, making... being the narrator of your advert. So, as I said, that's probably why he's that low down. But I did have to include probably the greatest player of all time on the list. And also as well, I don't know if you guys are kind of the same, because obviously you kicked off with Chambers, and obviously Matt, you kicked off with Neil Warnock. I did try to limit the amount of West Ham related people. Like, don't get me wrong, there are still a few in here anyway, but yeah, I if I was being true to myself, I probably could have made the whole list completely West Ham. So I've avoided doing that. Again, I don't know if you guys have done something similar with your lists.
No.
Matt's just all West Ham at this point.
Yeah, mine's is just the starting 11, mate. Yeah, no, well, I don't have a lot of West Ham in there.
No, I don't have too many Ipswich in there. I think the thing I have with Ipswich is quite a lot of the people from the club that I'd like to meet, I actually have already met or had some interaction with.
Yeah.
So that's partially why I don't have as many in there as maybe I could have done. And the era that I've kind of grown up watching football, it's not been that good. So it's been a bit like...
No, that's true.
You've been there through the decline that I've seen. Great.
Actually, yeah, that is you did raise a good point there, actually, Simon, because there was a few people that I kind of thought actually I have met a lot of West Ham related people already. So yeah, I try. As I said, there's only already one on my list that I have met previously. So, and even then, that was very brief. So that's good. All right, then moving on to our number 9s. Then, Simon, who is your 9th place?
Okay, my 9th place is probably the most arrogant man. Not just in football, but I think in the entire world. Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Ooh.
And I would love to meet him to find out if that is actually how he is.
I think it is.
I think it is, but I would love to know.
He revels in the...
I mean, just some of the stuff he comes out with is just fantastic.
Oh, it is brilliant.
I'd love to have the arrogance of that.
But, I mean, I'm going to say this. He's my number 5. Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I mean, I feel like we might... Yeah, I feel like... I know we've done this a few times. I feel like if we mention anyone that's on anyone's list, we might as well discuss it all in one go then and there, so we don't have to harper back to it later on. But yeah, he's my number 5. And as you said, it would be really interesting to see, because I imagine that even interacting with fans and the media, I feel like you would never truly know whether his online, or not his on, his public persona is the same as his private persona. You would you would never really know that. Only he can really know. Only him and maybe his very close family.
I mean, it would be great if you met him and he was just like a really sensitive, like down to earth, chill guy.
I don't think it is.
No, I don't think it is.
I mean, I think you can be arrogant and be sensitive. I mean, down to earth, probably not. But then.
But some of the stuff he comes out with, he's not sensitive. Like when I think, was it a reporter asked him, like what he was getting his wife for his birthday? It's like, she doesn't need anything, she already has Zlatan. I'm like, come on, mate. Like, his wife's like a supermodel as well. Like, she's well out of his league.
But he wouldn't see it that way, though. He wouldn't think that she was out of his league.
But can you imagine if you walked into a bar with Zlatan Ibrahimovic? Like, it would just be amazing. Like, he would shut the place down, like, be like, yes, I'm the boss. And I reckon, like, everyone...
He would thrive off of that, really, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and just being around him, I reckon you'd feel more confident. just by, like, osmosis.
Yeah.
You'd want to put yourself on his level, really, wouldn't you? Or at least try to. But as far as, say, Zlatan Ibrahimovic is concerned, obviously, how much do you think his arrogant persona helps him in football? Like, how much do you think that contributes to what he does, and how much do you think it contributes to what he is capable of? Because you kind of think that arrogance without necessarily being able to back it up is pretty crap, really, but obviously he can back it up. And do you feel like that arrogance almost fuels everything he does? Because it probably has to, doesn't it?
I definitely think that, and I have often said that I don't think England players are allowed to be arrogant enough.
What, because of the media?
Because of the media, we like our sportsmen to be humble and very good game. Yes, they were tough opposition. No, if we're better than them, say we're fucking better than them. Like, let's go out with the arrogance and the swagger, because you do automatically, as you say, you have to raise yourself to that level. You can't, if you're coming up with a big talking game, you've got to fucking back it up. Yeah. And I think you look at really top players, most of them have that swagger. In different ways, because I think Messi has it, he's just not very public with it.
Yeah.
But you know that when it comes to game day, he's thinking, I'm a boss. I'm absolutely going to smash them.
The standard that he must set himself as well. Yeah. Lionel Messi obviously mentioned.
But my point is, you look at, I just think English players, they're told to be very nice and controlled, and let's be respectful of everyone. No, let's go out with the mentality of we are a strong side and we are a good side. And it's always an issue, and it's not just football where English sport has this hang up of like not having the arrogance.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a whole pod in itself, but I mean, I watch a lot of cricket, but the England white ball team are now the best team in the world, and they tell people routinely they're the best team in the world, and they back it up because now they kind of set that gauntlet for themselves, and they have to reach it, otherwise they look stupid. And I think that football can learn from that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
No, yeah, I think it's a really good point. Oh, sorry, George, were you going to say something?
No, go on, mate.
Oh, no, yeah, I was just going to say, and I think there's... and I think you're totally right. It's a very unique thing in the UK. We hold the very high expectations and a lot of expectations on in particularly footballing representing players. So essentially English players or players that play for England. There's a massive expectation in the media from them. And I think, yeah, you're totally right.
Not just the expectation. I think the expectation is one thing. I think when you do have the golden generation of England coming through 15 years ago, I think when you do have those players, there should be a certain level of expectation in not only in the media but across the nation in general. That team was capable of winning things, and obviously,
but I think the weird part of it is we all have the expectation within ourselves, but they're not allowed to physically express that expectation. Yeah. That's what I've always found baffling. So that golden generation going to World Cups, they weren't allowed to say we're going to win the World Cup. Why not? We are going to win the World Cup. Go with that expectation and go with that belief, and let the players say that if they believe they can, and they probably should have done because they were a great side. But
no, 100%, 100% agree. I almost feel, and this is probably more football related than throughout the nation as a whole, but you look at, say, not only English players but say the Premier League in general. Something that really kind of I never really noticed it when I was younger because I wasn't really looking out for this kind of thing. But I almost feel like, obviously the Premier League is a brand, and obviously it's the most successful league in the world in terms of global appeal. And obviously the FA and the Premier League, they know that. And I almost feel like as a result, they, to a certain degree, they almost try and stop people from expressing their true personality. If you watch a post-match interview, if the manager says something, regardless of whether it's slagging off a referee or if he says something even remotely controversial, there's a good chance that he might get, if not fined for it, it will certainly be picked up in the media and they'll make a huge story of it. And it's mainly because, and again, you see, I feel like in this day and age as well, I feel like once you've seen one post-match interview with a man of the match or a player on the losing game, realistically, you've probably seen them all because they all probably follow that same sort of, oh yeah, well, we just needed to get the 3 points today and, we played well or we didn't play that well. And yeah, I feel like the system as a whole, at least as far as football is concerned, the media, it's a little bit different, but I feel like it's very restrictive in terms of people actually expressing themselves. And yeah, if somebody has scored a hat-trick in a game or, played an absolute blinder, I'd want them to stand there at the interview. And again, I know they can't really swear on TV or things, but basically say, yeah, I played fucking well today. I fucking bossed it. This is what I'm about. Keep watching, and this is what you'll keep getting. I would just kind of love to see that sort of personality or the individual's personality injected. And as I said, I feel like every interview, at least as far as football's concerned, more often than not, unless something really catches someone that rubs someone up the wrong way, I feel like nearly every interview in modern day football, whether it be a manager, a player or whatever, at least when they're talking to the official media outlets, it's very cookie cutter. It's very, it's very copy and paste kind of thing. There's not really a personality to it. And Ibrahimovic kind of is the exact polar opposite of that. Every time he opens his mouth, you're sat there thinking, he could say something spicy here, and you listen with everything.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from experience here on that post-match interview point, because obviously I've gone to a lot now, doing commentary and stuff. And as you say, after about 2 of them, I'm like, well, this is boring.
I bet.
Seen this, and I just leave now. There's no point sticking around. They literally just say the same shit, different day. We may have strayed off topic a little there. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, my number 9.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, no, as I said, I just think it was a good point to make, and I do think it was. You can relate that to Ibrahimovic because he's almost the polar opposite of that mentality, which is 100% why he's on my list at number 5 and probably why he's on yours at number 9, because you don't get enough of that in this day and age of football. So yeah, moving on then. Your number 9 then, Matt.
So my number 9 is My number 9 is... Again, I really enjoyed this topic because it meant that we could kind of stray out of just footballers and stats and all that shit. So the number 10 that I've... number 9, 9. I know how to count. Is Jose Mourinho.
Okay, I'll go in. He's my number 5. No, 6. Number 6 as well, Jose Mourinho.
George, did you have him?
No, I didn't. And you know what? Now that you've said him, I'm kind of thinking... Oh, actually, no, that's a really good shout. I really hadn't... I don't know why, he just didn't enter my brain for some reason when I thought...
Because he's a special one, mate.
Yeah. No, go on, mate, yeah. Elaborate. What would be your ideal scenario for meeting Jose Mourinho?
Oh, me and Jose, we would, we'd...
Couple of pints and spoons?
A couple... Well, it would be more, we would end up both having our flight cancelled from... somewhere to London, and it's just me and him. This is getting a bit weird. It's almost like we're on a date. But no, I could talk to him.
You could do much worse, man.
He is a...
Yeah, you'd be lucky to go on a date with Jose Mourinho, mate.
I mean, if I text the boys in the group chat, oi boys,
I think we'd all be over
Jose
there.
Mourinho has just bought me dinner. I reckon he would treat me well.
I reckon he would.
Moving on from just my relationship ambitions with him. Hey, he sounds like a good fella. He's a bit of a nutter. He's very says what he thinks and doesn't give a fuck about the repercussions, which I like. And I could thank him for confirming that Spurs is going to win the league.
As far as Mourinho is concerned, and obviously you did allude to some of the stuff that he says, obviously. How much of that do you think is a public persona for, the cameras and the media, and obviously how much of that would you say is his own personality? Again, obviously, I mentioned earlier about Zlatan and wondering whether he's the same in his private life as he is publicly. And Mourinho, I think it's kind of a similar thing for me, because you've got this huge character that is Jose Mourinho, and is he going to be? Is he going to have that winning mentality throughout everything?
No, mate. There's no way when the Monopoly board comes out that Mourinho isn't like, I'm playing to win.
Christmas Day, the family are playing Monopoly, and then while none of his kids and his missus are looking, he's just helping himself to the money from the bank.
Absolutely no doubt in my mind that Mr. Mourinho is doing
that is Jose Mourinho in and out. But
I mean, you talk about the public persona. I think the way he acts with the media now is much closer to him in real life.
Yeah.
Compared to how he was that first time at Chelsea when he comes in, I'm the special one. And then I know when he came back to Chelsea, it's like, now I'm the happy one. I think now you see, so he's had, that was at a time when he was continuously winning.
Yeah.
And he kind of had that, he just had to build that character for himself. Now, I think he doesn't give as much of a fuck. Like, he's won it all. Like, he doesn't need to be so cocksure and arrogant about stuff. So I think the way he acts now is much closer to him as a person, as a man. I think you see that in that Spurs documentary, like the way he acts in that. I think shows that he had a much more personality than before. But obviously, when you're working your way up, you just got to show no weakness. Now it's like, well, I've won it all, so I might as well just be more normal.
Definitely. I mean, obviously as well, because you did, different circumstances, different points of his career. I mean, would you also say as well, especially over the last few years, probably really over the last 5 years or so, things really, it's easily been the worst period of his career in terms of silverware. Obviously, he won a League Cup and a Europa League at Man United, but since that last title at Chelsea 5 years ago, at least, when you look at his previous record prior to that point, this is a real dry spell for him in terms of silverware right now. And as you said, obviously, he's at a different time in his career than he was when he first joined at Chelsea, because he is the established man now that he wasn't really when he joined Chelsea. If Chelsea hadn't gone well first time round, he might have never had another big club again. But do you think that also now that the last 5 years or so, we've really kind of seen him under circumstances where things haven't gone well, and rather than sort of play it off charismatically like he would have really done for the interviews back in the day, do you think that, maybe suffering defeats or whatever, it kind of has him sitting there saying, you know what, I can't be bothered with this. I'm just going to I'm just going to focus on the football side of it because, yeah, obviously, if you look, there is a very different, Jose Mourinho comes across very differently now than he did back when he first started at Chelsea. And or do you think it's where, as what you alluded to, Simon, it's just a case of he doesn't give a fuck because, he is the guy now? Or do you think that, maybe if he started winning things regularly again, we'd get that character of Jose Mourinho that first emerged at Stamford Bridge in 2004?
I think he's grown up, personally. I think he's grown up in maturity-wise. I think losing or being at some clubs where he didn't do what he really needed to do or what they expected of when they signed Jose Mourinho maybe set that about. So I think part of it that he's grown up and just matured. And I think the other thing is I think as Simon said, he's just won everything he needs to win, and he's a bit more sure of himself, where I think before perhaps he was a bit more Jose Mourinho the performer. Now he's just Jose Mourinho the
manager, basically. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. All right then. So moving on from that, my number 9, I have gone with arguably the original GOAT. I have gone with Pele, Mr. 3 World Cups, over 1,000 goals.
George, you're loving the language barriers, aren't you? Pele and Messi.
I know. I know. Again, it's partly why Pele is so is number 9, because again, when you think of the figure that is Pele, obviously there's not many bigger in football. Saying that though, I have seen him do interviews and things. I don't think his English is too bad.
He must be getting on now though.
He's pushing 80 now. Yeah, he's pushing 80 now.
When he played in the 58 World Cup when he was 17, so
so he'd be 80 2021, I think, something like that. But for me, Pele, 3 World Cups, again the exact goal total, because obviously for years I did think over 1,000 goals, but then when you realise that some of them were against like
farmers,
I'm not
me and you in the park,
basically, yes. Which, I don't blame him.
I've also scored 1,000 goals if it's against.
If it was me, I'd definitely count it. If I was him, I'd even be counting whatever I'd get in 7-a-side on a Sunday or something. Even now, I'd just still be adding to it. But
although I do think that people have started to disrespect him.
No, I agree.
His goals weren't always against. He scored goals in every World Cup that he was in. He was the best player at the 70 World Cup by a fucking mile. And you look, and that Santos team regularly toured in Europe. I know people say he never played in Europe, but they were smashing Benfica with the European champions, comfortably. Yeah, exactly. Well,
that was the thing. They were, as you said, they were humbling Eusebio's Benfica, and they were European champions. So, this wasn't a bad team that he was playing in, and it certainly wasn't a bad... Yeah, I do agree. It kind of annoys me. Because don't get me wrong, the goal statistics, I can kind of get why you'd want to maybe look at them a little bit closer before... Because I'm not going to lie, even I don't really know where to begin in terms of saying, he definitely scored this many competitive goals, or he definitely scored this many goals for club and this many goals for country... Because, some of them are a little bit dubious. But, as you said, I do feel like in this day and age, especially on social media, I do think that there's a lack of respect for what he did achieve. He's the only man to have won 3 World Cups. And to have effectively been the best player in arguably the best international team of all time.
Many people argue the best team ever of all time. A lot of people who saw that 70 Brazil side think that. So what would you ask him then, George? What would be your one question if you got to meet him?
Would you like a cup of tea?
Yeah, I mean, that's just manners, Matt. That's just manners, You got to make sure he's hydrated.
He's old now. I mean, come on. He needs a cup of tea.
Got to make sure he's hydrated.
Do you think he drinks his tea out of the World Cups?
I would. I was saying that, though. I don't think the Jules Rimet trophies make that good a holder. But, to be fair, I probably would, because you got to think how young he was, especially in that first World Cup. And again, I feel like loads of people kind of disrespect him for the second World Cup because he got injured, I think, in the first game, if not the second game, and was out for the rest of the tournament. And then one of my favourite players of all time, Garrincha, took the mantle and really dragged Brazil to that that World Cup that year. He was effectively like the Brazilian George Best, Garrincha, at least in terms of their off-field antics, that kind of thing. But no, I'd probably ask him, what it's like to win a World Cup, just to be in that, just to have won the World Cup, especially not just once, but three times. And also as well, I'd probably ask him who is the best player that he played with, because I think that would be a very interesting answer. And also, who's the best player that he's ever come up against? Because he very famously said that Bobby Moore was the best defender he ever played against. I'd be interested to know who he thought was the best across the entire pitch. So yeah, I'd have a few questions for him like that. Obviously this kind of goes without saying, but Pele, if you are listening, feel free to come on.
Yeah,
Pele is not listening, mate. Pele has got better things.
I can say, if you're listening, Pele, get a better life.
Yeah. Pele, I'm sorry for whatever has led you down this path.
I don't know how you got here, but you really should be somewhere else.
Yeah, well, who knows, man? Who knows? People listen to weird things. So yeah, that's my number 9. Moving on to number 8 then. Simon, who are you going with number 8?
So my number 8 is the other arguable GOAT of this era.
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Cristiano Ronaldo. Sorry, Matt just did a goat noise. I don't know if you might pick that up. Cristiano Ronaldo is my number 8. Similar reasons why you've got Messi, but without the language barrier.
Yeah.
It's partly why I also think that I feel like Ronaldo would be more fun. I don't know if that is accurate, but he seems like he would have a lot of connections.
I see. I think the opposite. I reckon he would actually be a bit boring. And the reason I say that, not boring, I think he'd be interesting to have a chat to, but I feel like he's not someone that goes out flash. And the reason I say that is because there's a really interesting story. I think it was like Patrice Evra and Ferdinand.
Oh, good old Patrice. We love Patrice.
They went round his house when he was at United, and it was on like a Saturday or a Sunday.
Oh, I've heard this story.
And he was like, yeah, lads, do you want to go jump in the gym? Or it was something along those lines.
Yeah.
And it's the story Rio Ferdinand always tells about just how dedicated of a player and of a person he is.
Yeah.
So
I think that's right. And partially that's what I've always really respected about him. He's a player who I feel has kind of got the most out of his game. Like, he has squeezed every ounce out of himself that he could have got. And I admire that ability to stick. And I think one thing I'd love to know, like, from Ronaldo is how did he have that mentality of continually striving to be better and better and better?
I think it's got to be an obsession, probably even more than that. It's got to be an absolute hunger, It's got to be probably the one thing that drives you. Everything else, you could almost go, as long as I've got food and somewhere to sleep, nothing else but this matters, kind of thing.
I mean, I think the difference between Messi and Ronaldo is I feel like Messi's so naturally gifted. Like, he could almost not play football for 5 years and he would still be as good as ever.
Yeah.
In a way. But I think Ronaldo has to work like twice as hard to get almost as much, if not, I mean, depending where you level and rate them, which I think is a stupid comparison. But to get that out of his game, I feel like he's worked that much harder to be at that level.
yeah.
And I do respect that about him. And I think he's, just as you say, that just have that mentality, that drive, that focus. Next goal, play game after game, never letting your standards drop. And never accepting mediocrity.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
It's what I find so interesting about those guys is like the whole Messi Ronaldo thing. Regardless of what, it's almost like someone wrote a story.
How much do you think that they both drive each other? Because I imagine that Messi drives Ronaldo quite a lot. How much do you think Ronaldo drives Messi?
I think probably more than Messi would ever tell anybody.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
It's always that thing of, if you're the best, you need someone to push you. I just think during eras where there's a real lull in players and there's not quite the same standard of competition, there's no one continually making sure you top the list. I don't think if Messi and Ronaldo didn't have each other, we would have seen the Ballon d'Or being won by the same people for 10 years. Like, that just wouldn't have happened. One season, there would have been a dip in form. There would have been something just to be like, they'd have rested on their laurels. It would have gone a bit flat for a year. It happens unless somebody's pushing you. And I think you're right. I do think Messi pushes Ronaldo more than the other way round. But I also think that Messi would never reveal how much that Ronaldo pushes him, because he definitely does. There's no way he couldn't, is there? I mean, when you know the other guy's 10 out of 10, you know that only 10 out of 10 will do. That's how you've got to be.
It's almost better in the way that it's that each of them only really have that one rival, in that they're out on their own. Nobody else is worthy of their space in that argument, really.
They're on another level. He's won 4 Champions Leagues. He's played in 3 different countries. Just like his experience of football has been amazing. Like the way that he's kind of gone around. He's continually won in every country. And Messi definitely could have done, but obviously he's only stayed at Barcelona his whole career. That's not a dig at Messi. Barcelona's a fantastic club. But I would love to know like the differences between Italy, Spain, England, how the training is different, how the game is different, and how you had to change his game to adapt to certain different countries and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it would also with like the question I'd also ask Ronaldo if I met him is, when are you going to pack it in?
I reckon he's got another 4 years in him.
I would say playing as a professional, I could see him playing.
Well, he must be 35 by now, so
I can see.
Well, what I love about Ronaldo in terms of when he's got older is he's changed his game. He knows he can't run anymore, so he stays in the box, in the business end of the pitch. Be in the red zone. Be there where it counts. We don't need you sprinting 40 yards to defend. Stay up front and get the goals. That's what you're good for. And he's changed his game to be that player, which is fantastic.
I remember when he used to play for Manchester United, and he was a trickster. That was basically what you associated him with, that having all the flicks and the tricks to beat a man and then get a good cross in. And, you know, obviously he did have that year where he did score 40 goals. But at the same time, you still always kind of felt that his game was more about beating players and taking players on. And obviously he's evolved into probably the best out-and-out goal scorer there's ever been. At least in terms of, you know, like, I want to say almost an out-and-out striker in that kind of sense. But the thing is with Ronaldo, I think he retires when he doesn't think that he can hit the standards that he sets himself.
He's earned the right to go out on his own terms, hasn't he? Let's be fair.
I don't see him, because you know how like some players, you know, regardless of how good they were, what level they played at, some players will go on until they are, I don't know, he's approaching 40 now, but some players will go on until they are 40, but they'll drop down leagues and stuff like that in order to carry on doing that. I don't think Ronaldo would ever get to a point where he'd drop down leagues. I think Ronaldo would basically get to a point where he goes, right, if I can't do it for a club that's realistically going to be competing for titles and going to be competing for Champions League, that's my time to bow out.
It's just where you draw the line.
Well, yeah, when the day comes that he doesn't think he can do that anymore, that's when I think he's going to call it a day. So
that'd be a sad day for football.
It would be a very sad day for football. So that was your number 8, Simon.
Yep.
Matt, who are you going with your number 8, mate?
My number 8 is, and I don't think either of you would have picked him, but let's find out. My number 8 is Troy Deeney.
That is an interesting pick. I haven't picked him.
That is an interesting pick. He's had an interesting life.
He's had a bloody interesting life. I mean, how much do you guys know about his past?
Well, I know he was in prison, wasn't he?
Yeah, so he went, obviously he was in prison, really a player that I think has almost been hamstrung a little bit by the age in which he became a professional and really got into the Premier League. You know, he got involved in a lot of stuff that was obviously crap, and what I love about him most is that he talks about it so openly, and it's just really, really
quite eloquently as well.
Eloquently, yeah, and he's a guy that's really obviously grown up, and he's I think he's an excellent example of a modern footballer, someone that, you know, hasn't come from the best background.
Would you argue football saved him in terms of going down different?
I mean, and he talks about it quite a lot, about the kind of path that he was on, and really just the mindset that he's had. I've got so much respect for Troy Deeney, and also like he's just a lad. Like he comes across as such a great guy, and I think it would be I feel like he's got endless stories.
I mean, I couldn't be in a room with Troy Deeney though and not ask him about that goal against Leicester in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The most unbelievable goal in the most unbelievable game. It was just crazy. Players going fucking ballistic. I mean, it was just... we've all watched football a lot. That's up there as one of the most insane moments of football I've ever seen. Penalty to win it at one end, saved, up the other end, goal to win it. Unbelievable.
It was the shirt off in the crowd.
Yeah, I'd take a booking for that every day of the week, no question.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely worth it. I do think that's a really interesting shout, though, to be honest, Matt, because, as you said, he's one of those where I think he's a very good role model for people that maybe do not have an ideal start to life, whether it be because, they've been brought up in a bit of a shitty background or a shitty area. He is a perfect example of somebody, that can, maybe head down a bad path and then get back on the right path eventually. And I do think you raise a very good point there, Simon. Football almost has saved Troy Deeney. Strolling on to my number 8. Now, this one is definitely a fun one. I imagine that this one would definitely be a bit of a laugh. So I've kind of cheated a little bit with it, in that I've not really named a specific person. However,
Hang on, what's going on here?
Well, allow me to elaborate a little bit. So obviously, and it was funny how you mentioned the language barrier earlier, because, at least in regards to my number 9 and my number 10 picks, because the first one of the people involved in this you definitely have a few language issues with. I have gone with the lads from Soccer Saturday in general. That's my number 7 pick, and I'm talking...
Well, no, George, are you going for the old cast? Because I've also just replaced
I am going for the old cast. I know Merson's still there, and that was what I was alluding to as far as the language barrier is concerned, because sometimes I'm convinced that even he doesn't know what he's saying or whose name he's pronouncing. But yeah, I'm talking Jeff Stelling, Matt Letizia, Phil Thompson, Charlie Nicholas, Paul Merson, the gang, all that lot. And Chris Kamara, of course, because of that famous Fratton Park moment. One of the best bits of British television there has ever been. So yeah, and I imagine that they would all be. I know obviously Paul Merson is having to, stay sober now, and we all wish him very well in that regard. But I do think that those guys would make for a very, very fun night out, and they'd be good to talk to, because you've got to think of the years and that they've had in football, the careers these guys have had. I'd really, really like to meet the Soccer Saturday lads. They would be a bit of a dream guest on this podcast, a bit of a dream to meet.
So again, lads, if you're listening, you know where we are. Give us a ring.
This is the thing, man. Like Phil Thompson, Matt Letizia, Charlie Nicholas, I don't know if you guys have got work yet, but...
So what else have you got to do?
Yeah. So, get on the podcast. But, yeah, no, those guys... Yeah, I've spent... I'm sure you're the same, Simon. I've just seen them on telly for years and years at this point. And it's just great fun, great set of lads.
Yeah, I think the chemistry between them as well is what would make it fun.
Exactly.
You talk about them as TV personalities, and I know you briefly touched on it. They've got great footballing stories as well.
Exactly.
All of them would have. I mean, Merson was part of that Arsenal team in the mid-90s, which was a bit bloody mental.
Yeah.
They were all on the piss half the time. Phil Thompson was part of that Liverpool team of the 80s, which was unbeatable. They've all been part... I'm not sure, was Charlie Nicholas part of the 89 Arsenal squad? I can't remember.
He might have been, I'm not too sure.
But Matt Letizia obviously scored over 100 goals for Southampton. So they will all have great career stories, not just from punditry, but from their actual footballing careers, which were all very good, you have to say. Not one of those had a poor career. They were all very, very good players as well.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely. As I said, that's why I've basically put them down. As I said,
although I think you should have picked one. I feel like we've only got 10 people. Yeah. You've now got 15. I mean,
being
come on.
Greedy here, lads. As I said, I have kind of cheated. I've kind of lumped them all in together there. But it's like trying to pick for your children, man.
you've got to pick one, George. They're both hanging off a cliff.
George,
pick one.
You've got one of them. You can have one of Soccer Saturday. Who are you choosing?
Merson.
Merson.
If they're all off a cliff.
Yeah, Sorry, Jeff. Sorry, Matt. Sorry, Phil. Sorry, Charlie.
Yeah.
Merce. All right, I can live with that.
You've met Paul Merson, haven't you, Simon?
I have met Paul Merson.
How did that come about?
So Ipswich were playing Arsenal in the League Cup semi-final. I was in a box with someone my mum knew, and the skybox was next door.
Oh, that's great.
That night I met JB Redknapp and Paul Merson. They were both just doing the game. We waited for them after the game, and I've got a picture with Redknapp and Merce.
Oh, that's really cool.
So yeah, I did meet him. I didn't really say anything to him. I was a bit nervous, but it was just a case of, can I have a photo? Yeah, I went, cheers, thanks very much. No, it seemed nice.
Yeah, no, decent. But yeah, that's my number 8 then. So moving on to number 7 then, Simon. Who is your number 7?
So my number 7 is also a TV personality these days, presenting Match of the Day for, I don't know how many years now, 10, 20 odd years, something like that?
About 20 odd
Gary
years
Lineker.
now, mate. Yeah, we get into there now.
Yeah. I mean, fantastic player, fantastic guy. Just seems like a solid guy. Just a guy you'd spend a day with, and he'd just have just great stories. I mean, he's played with loads of people, Maradona, all like great players. Played at World Cups, scored at World Cups, played at Barcelona. I mean, he just had a great career, and then obviously with his punditry work as well with BT and with the BBC. I mean, I'm sure he's got plenty of stories from there as well. And he just, as I say, he just seems like a bit like your dad, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when you watch a Match of the Day,
I was just going to say those words. Yeah, he's kind of like, for anyone that grew up watching Match of the Day, he's kind of like the nation's dad in like a really weird way.
It's like, oh, Gary Lineker's on, I feel safe.
Yeah. Like the thing is, he's I'll be open. He's my number 3.
Wow, really that high? See, I've not got Lineker on this list, and I really did consider him, to be honest. He would have been number 11, to be fair, but I did kind of think there was a possibility that you guys would put him on yours. But yeah, no, I
mean, just as I say, I just think that he has. I mean, you saw when the Maradona thing broke, and he kind of tells all these stories about Maradona of the player he was and how he was as a guy. You just know that he's got so many more like that, and he's played with everybody.
Yeah. When you think that, I know that at the very least he's been on, been working with the BBC for over 20 years, and I think he's been presented Match of the Day for around 20 years or so now. But you got to think, all the stories like that. Obviously, as you said, he's got a great footballing career behind him to talk about. Me personally, I think the go-to topic that I would probably want to discuss with Lineker would be that incident where he had to wear his pants while presenting Match of the Day.
I thought you were going to say when he shat on the pitch.
No, to be fair, I feel like especially on social media, I feel like that drum gets beat way too much. But yeah, no, I'd kind of like to know at what point did he start feeling nervous.
I reckon he was confident. I mean, you look at him; he's got it. He's still working it. He's not lost his physique, because he was fine.
No, he was fine, but at the same, I'd still be a little bit like, I can't believe I'm going on fucking telly in my pants like that. That's still.
I mean, unless he just won the league, he didn't give a shit, mate.
The other thing I'd like to talk to is that Gaza incident, because obviously he does that famous.
Have a word with him, yeah, that kind of thing.
So that would be another one, and obviously like Bobby Robson was one of my idols, like growing up.
Yeah.
So he was an Ipswich manager, and I reckon he always says Bobby's like one of the best managers he ever worked with, and I'd love to hear some of his stories about Bobby Robson as well. So that's why Lineker number 7.
Definitely, mate. All right then, your number 7 then, Matt.
Jack Grealish.
Oh God!
Simon
knows. The Twitter thing.
Yeah, Simon knows what I'm talking about.
Saw it today.
Yeah, good old picture. No, the reason I already agreed with myself that he was on this list before today, and really the main reason is I fucking can't stand the guy. Honest to God, he does my head in.
Does my head in as well.
So hang on a second, Matt. So if you were gonna meet him, then are you gonna antagonise him, or are you?
No, it's quite the opposite. I just want to have a chat, because I feel like at the end of it, I won't think he's a massive wanker.
Right.
Or you might think he's actually more of a
Or
wanker.
I think he's more of a wanker. But at least I'll have closure.
Yeah. Then you'll know.
Then I'll know at least. Yeah. The thing with Jack is he's worshipped at Villa. Villa fans kissed the ground, and I get it. He's a great player. He genuinely is fantastic. I think for me as a player, just talking about football because this is a football podcast for 30 seconds.
Taking liberties there.
I know. I feel like he lacks impact at times, especially. There's games where he does a couple of flicks and looks all cool, but doesn't always have the impact in a game. But when you look across the face of a season, he's there and he has so much goal involvement. So, I think he's a wicked player. But ultimately, it's more a personality thing. I think he's a bit of a prick.
He's definitely a little bit.
He's a bit of a prick, but I feel like I'd love to have a beer with him. And I reckon at
well,
the
you
end
don't
of
know
it,
where the night might take you. George, have you seen the picture that came out today of Jack?
No, I haven't. What's this?
It's him in a hotel room with a woman with her tits out.
Oh, love it.
Like, completely flouted all the COVID regulations, go to a hotel with a random woman.
Good man.
Him and Ross Barkley, I think, have been caught up in this today.
Oh, Jesus
and
Christ.
honestly, the night out would be incredible. There's no way you'd get in till 4 a.m. It would be an amazing night with Jack Grealish.
I think 4 a.m. would be an early one for Jack Grealish.
Yeah, that's tame. That's tame.
You know what? Yeah, and I feel like I'm going to be in the minority when I say this. I feel like Jack Grealish gets a bit of a bad rep that he maybe doesn't deserve. Don't get me wrong. I know obviously we played them recently. At the time of this recording, we played them about nearly 2 weeks ago now. West Ham played Aston Villa. And there was that incident where, he it was a dive. That's the best way to describe it.
He dove.
Yeah.
But do you know what? If that's a West Ham player, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that loads of people kind of get onto his back about that when, to be honest with you, it's really not just him and it's also not just a foreign player thing either. I really do, don't get me wrong, nobody wants to see that in the game, and I really do think that not only the FA and the Premier League, but I also think UEFA and FIFA should maybe start hammering down on simulation and stuff like that, because we're seeing things, where players are maybe just almost barely breathed on and they go down like they're being shot.
The defence I'll make on Jack Grealish on that one is he does genuinely get kicked about 20 times a game, like legitimately.
Because he's that good.
But people only notice him diving once.
Yeah.
He's legitimately being murdered on the pitch for 80 minutes.
I'm not saying that then justifies simulation, because obviously it doesn't, but
no.
For me, I do think that people make him out to be more of a knobhead than he actually is. At the end of the day, he's just I think
it's also the accent.
Don't get me wrong, he's about as brummy as it comes, and I'm glad, to be fair, that he didn't end up playing for the Republic of Ireland, not just because he's turned into such a great player, but just because he's blatantly not Irish. That's basically it, in the same kind of way that if Declan Rice had ended up playing for Ireland, again, not just because he's a good player, but I'm like, dude, he's fucking born in Kingston upon Thames or wherever it was, for crying out loud. And he's got Irish nan and granddad or something.
Yeah. I like Jack Grealish as a footballer,
but then I kind of think, if you, especially, all right, he's coming into probably the peak of his career now, which is about 25, isn't he? Something like that. But I do kind of think if you were playing professional football for a Premier League club, and if you were earning that kind of money that he was as well, so I feel like people almost treat. And this isn't just Jack Grealish, this goes for footballers in general. I feel like people forget that they are human beings. And for me personally, obviously, the COVID thing at the minute, that is bad, obviously. But when the season's over and the players are allowed on holiday, providing they're not doing anything illegal, for me, they should be able to get as pissed as they want without the press, being like, oh, look at him, he's drinking, he's, sleeping with these girls or whatever. For me, what somebody does in their time off is their own, that's their own time. That's their free time. They can do with it what they want.
Yeah, you earn hundreds of thousands of pounds.
But that's why I said off this, off season. Obviously, if it impacts him, obviously if he does it to the point where he's then not fully fit for 2 months into the season, that's an issue. But if he takes a week, 2 weeks off between, let's say in a normal year without COVID, let's say between May to August, right? Let's say in that time period, he goes away for 2 weeks and spends 2 weeks getting shit-faced. By the time the season begins again, by the time pre-season begins again, he's going to be fine. There's going to be no issues there. And I feel like the media especially do make a bigger deal out of it than what it is, especially when these players are, around 17, 18, 19, 20, that are on ridiculous money. Of course they're going to go away on lads' holidays and have fun and do maybe be a little bit cheeky or whatever. For me, that's normal, and I think too much gets made of that kind of thing. But no, I do think number 7, Jack Grealish, I do think that's a good shout from you, Matt, to be honest. So yeah, all right, then moving on to my number 7. Now, I've gone for a choice that I do think basically it really depends on whether you're a twat or not, but this might trigger some people. I've gone with number 7 for me, Alex Scott. I think in terms of what she's doing right now, or what she has been doing for the last couple of years, it's almost revolutionised punditry, to that in that kind of sense. I know that Sky for a while have always had like women reporters, and you think of like Bianca Westwood and some of their presenters and stuff like that.
She is annoying. I've met her. She is annoying.
You've met Bianca Westwood?
Yeah, she was at Ipswich quite a lot when I've been there.
I imagine she was. So why was she annoying?
She just thought the world revolved around her, like getting all the staff
really?
to do stuff for her. Like, it's like I can't be asked with that. Like Tony Cottee's there. He's like proper legend of the game. Like,
yeah,
you wouldn't even notice. He just kind of sits in the corner, keeps himself to himself. She turns in and she's like being all loud.
Oh, fair enough, mate. Oh, a bit of gossip. But yeah, no, Alex Scott.
She's very good.
Yeah, no, this is the thing. Because when she's on Sky Sports, especially doing the punditry, more often than not, she's the most articulate person in the room. And not only is she articulate, but she also knows football. She probably knows the squads and she probably knows the positions better than, again, the other people that are with her.
You see her next to Jamie Redknapp and you're like, oh dear, Jamie.
The thing I would say, George, is she's my number 4.
Oh, really? I'm glad I'm not alone in that.
I'm going to be honest. She's got a really unique perspective on the game because she's not been involved in the men's side of it, but she's seen so much of it as a spectator. And obviously, she had I don't know. I'm going to be honest.
Fantastic career. You look at it.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about her career. I'm not going to pretend.
She's probably one of the main drivers of women football, I would say. Her and who was the other one? Kelly Smith in this country were the first kind of women footballers who anyone had actually heard of.
No, I agree, and I think, to be fair, as you said, Kelly Smith, that was the other person that really sort of sprung to mind. They've really kind of opened the door for female pundits in general in the modern game, at least in terms of the men's game, I should say, which I think is great. And as I said, it just really annoys me because every time that Alex Scott is on anything now, I think she was doing like comic relief the other day.
Well, yeah, every time she's on TV, her name is trending, like every time.
And they're like, oh, Alex Scott.
And it is bad.
Yeah, every single time. And it really, as I said, it really does my head in because it's a little bit like, well, not only does she know her stuff, but as I said, she's probably more articulate than...
I mean, she has to be twice as good as everyone else on there to be able to be on there. That seems to be like the whole thing.
Bullshit, but no,
like they hold her to a much different standard. It's like it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
No.
100%. And, I'm not saying that these people are bad pundits or whatever. I actually quite like Jamie Redknapp as a TV personality. But as you said, realistically, when you sit there and think about it, who's more likely to be giving you probably a better footballing insight, especially in 2020? Is it going to be Alex Scott or is it going to be Jamie Redknapp? And as I said, that doesn't mean that I think that Jamie Redknapp's a bad pundit, not at all. As you said, Alex Scott basically has to be twice as good as the people that she's with, and even then you still get people that just go, oh well, she only played at women's level, so she's not got the right to be on this TV programme. I should be on there more than she should because I won the treble on FIFA.
You got my voice from the first episode, mate.
Oh, that was what it was. That was what I channeled.
I completely agree. And I think it's also a massive shout that she's also a great representation of women in football, which is probably something that when she was growing up, I can't say for definite because she's older than me, but I'm sure if football was looked at, I doubt there was much representation in mainstream media of women in the sport, which is just great for girls in the game.
Yeah, no, I really only think in the last 5 years, and even then, it's still not accepted fully within the UK. I really only think within the last 5 years, people have really looked at women's football or women playing football at any level as a viable thing for women to do. And I feel like Alex Scott has really been at the forefront of changing that, and that's partly why just you know, we talked about, say, like, you know, going on the nights out and having a bit of laugh with people, but she would be a dream guest to have for me, just because we'd be able to sit down with her and say, you know, how did this affect you, and how much has it changed since you've been doing what you've been doing, which, you know, in my opinion, it's changed a lot, and for the better, really, because, as you said, you know, it's not just Alex Scott, Eniola Aluka as well is another one who, when she's on telly, you do almost feel like that she knows more than what her counterparts do, and you feel like she almost has to know more, because if she doesn't, people are going to sit there and go, oh, well, you shouldn't be on here because you didn't play at this level, which, you know, it's ridiculous. But so, yeah, as I said, I think Alex Scott has really been at the forefront of changing that, and, you know, if she keeps up this level of punditry that she currently gives when she's on telly, long may it continue, in my mind. So yeah, I think Alex Scott would be a great guest. So that was my number 7. Then moving into the Europa League spots.
So I mentioned my number 6 before was Jose Mourinho. Don't want to give too much more because we've already discussed it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll move on. Yeah, your number 6 then, Matt. Your Europa League spot.
It's Declan Rice.
Wow. Okay.
He's a West Ham player. I love him. I adore him. I'm gonna have a massive. I think I will definitely go into mourning when he leaves us. And I think
You
I
and me
will
both,
spend
mate.
the time up with him, just pleading him to stay.
That'll convince him to stay. You just
please
stay, please.
I can be very influential.
That almost sounds somewhat sexual then, mate.
Yeah, I said influential.
I'll be honest,
sensual.
I think Matt would go for that. It was like, Declan could stay. If that's what he wanted,
If
that
that's
was his
what
term.
he needed, if that's what he needed, I would do it for this football club. If that was where you have to draw the line.
That is dedication.
Declan Rice, please come on the podcast, even though I said good. Yeah, no, I think he's a young guy. He's younger than us.
Mate, he's still basically a fetus, man, but he's such a good footballer.
He's still basically a fetus. A much more successful and wealthy fetus than we are, though, George.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. No, I do think I am actually interested to learn a lot about who he is as a player, but I'm not going to pretend like it's not just massively biased because I'm a West Ham fan.
Would you get Mason Mount along for the trip? Because I feel like if you get Declan Rice,
I mean, if
you're
fucking
almost
George
definitely
is
going to get
allowed
Mason Mount.
5 people, I'm allowed at 2, so yeah, I'd whack Mason Mount in there.
Yeah, they'll come as a pair.
Yeah, they'll come down to the spoons, we'll have a couple pints, it'll be lovely.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I think Declan Rice is obviously, from a West Ham perspective, that is a decent shout. You know, not just that, he looks like he does have a really bright future ahead of him. Personally, I think possibly, you know, if he carries on in this vein, it's obviously unlikely that it will stay at West Ham, but I do think there's a really good chance he could become England captain one day. The thing with Declan Rice that I would really want to sit down and discuss outside of West Ham, though, it would definitely be the whole Republic of Ireland situation, but that would probably be for a time. That'd probably be better left once he'd finished playing football, I imagine.
I mean, to be honest, would you want to play for Mick McCarthy's Ireland?
No, exactly.
Like, playing as one of the back 12?
Yeah, that's about right.
I'll be honest, it doesn't appeal to me particularly. I can understand why that wasn't Declan's choice in the end. Can see why playing for England was a better prospect for him.
100%. Okay, right, so moving into my number 6, my Europa League spot, I have gone with good old Sam Allardyce for my number 6. Big Sam. Not even just from a West Ham perspective, though I would really like to speak to him on that, obviously, but also I'd really like to get into the whole England situation, because, yeah, that
was bad, man.
It was bad, wasn't it? And it's kind of weird to think that only a few years ago we were at a point where Sam Allardyce managed one England game, won the game, and then that was it.
100% win ratio, mate.
Yeah.
That's what they'll remember in history.
But obviously as well, I do kind of think that, and again, I'm definitely going to be in the minority when I say this, I do kind of think that he gets probably a little bit of a harsh reputation in the sense that, don't get me wrong, we all know this type of football that Allardyce plays, and it's not attractive on the eye. That's probably the understatement of the year. But I do think that he's good at what he does, and he's effective. And when you look at his record with us, with Bolton Wanderers, with Sunderland, with Crystal Palace, like that.
I mean, you talk about his style, though. That Bolton team played lovely football.
Yeah.
JJ Okocha. I mean, JJ Okocha isn't a Sam Allardyce type player.
No.
Fucking brilliant. I love watching Okocha. One of my favourite players of that era.
I feel like that kind of thing gets forgotten about with Allardyce, though. And as I said, don't get me wrong, obviously there were points as a West Ham fan. There was the year that our second year in the Premier League under him, it was terrible. We finished 14th overall, but we were pretty poor that year, and the football matched
The thing
that.
I think with Allardyce is I didn't give a shit about bad football. That would never bother me. Results football is what matters. I don't care about.
No, I agree.
But the thing that did change my opinion of him was that whole England thing, because that was bad.
Yeah.
Like, you know, as England manager, you've just got to be so careful. You can't do or say anything. Like, you've just got to, and that's why Allardyce was probably the wrong fit for the job from the start. But it's a whole other debate. And he deserved the job when he got it. Probably there was no other England choice, was there? If we're going to hire an English manager, he was top of that list. I mean,
as I said, I think he gets a bit of a bad rep in that kind of sense, because again, obviously, people would sit there and talk about the football and everything like that. No, for me, as I said, when you look at what he did at that Sunderland team in particular, you know, they'd been fighting relegation for a good few years, and then a year or two later, they did end up going down after he left. But yeah, as I said, you just can't argue with the results. And at the end of the day, he did what he needed to do, and he got the points that the teams needed to stay up.
yeah. What was his last job? He's been out of the game a while, hasn't he? Now, yeah,
Everton was probably his last job.
So you do kind of look at clubs. He seems to now be out of the loop of that managerial merry-go-round. But he seems to, like, there used to be a merry-go-round of you hire kind of Mark Hughes, Alan Pardew, Sam Allardyce or Tony Pulis if you're in the bottom four. Like, that was just what you did. And now he seems to, like, not have that rep anymore. I mean, if I was in the bottom three, if I was like Fulham now, I would think, why not Allardyce?
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that, to be honest with you. But maybe from his point of view, you know, maybe it's just time for him to sit back and retire if he wants to do that. But yeah, I always kind of felt that out of that managerial merry-go-round that you mentioned, I always kind of felt that Allardyce was the best, or at least the most effective in terms of keeping people up, and then probably Tony Pulis shortly behind in that regards. Whereas I thought that Mark Hughes, I largely thought was crap, and I couldn't stand the guy, to be honest with you. And Alan Pardew would start well, and then it would all, well, normally anyway, apart from West Brom, and then after about half a year or a season, it would all go tits up. But yeah, I always thought that Allardyce was better than that, and I think that Everton were actually quite harsh with Allardyce, because at the end of the day, they did bring him in to get them out of relegation, which he did, and then they kind of just went, all right, now fuck off.
Kind of like what we did with David Moyes.
Yeah, and then, you know, now we look like twats going back to get him again, but so, you know, at the minute we're doing all right under him, so long may that continue. But yeah, I always feel like he doesn't really get the, you know, maybe the respect he deserves, Sam Allardyce, and he has had a very, very interesting career, and there's always been a little part of me that would love to have seen him get a big job. And then when he did eventually get the England job, I was kind of so disappointed that it came to such a crashing end before he'd really had a chance to impact it in any kind of way. Yeah, I think he'd make for an interesting conversation. So my Europa League spot, number 6, Sam Allardyce. Moving into the final Europa League spot, number 5. Who are you going for, Simon?
So my number 5 is my other Ipswich Town choice, and he was from what for me was my best era as a Town fan in the mid-noughties, 2005. Shefki Kuchi, which is a name that many people will not know, will never know, and will never need to know.
I'm not going to lie, I don't know that name. So yeah, please elaborate, mate.
So he was a massive cult hero of the Ipswich Town team of that era. Nicknamed the Flying Finn for his famous celebration where he just like dived on the pitch. He did a massive like swan dive.
Okay.
Incredible. And him and Darren Bent played up front for that team in that season. And they were brilliant together. He was a big, strong centre forward. Bent was quick. Lots of flick-ons. He scored like 20 goals. But that's team I loved watching. I mean, if I could have had that whole team, I probably would have done. But we didn't cheat like you did,
Yeah.
George.
We stick to the rules here, George.
So, but they went out, they attacked opposition. We were winning games like 7-4, 4-0. Like, we would rubbish defensively, which is ultimately why we didn't go up. But it was just so good to watch. And he was, like I say, a massive cult hero. Like, and he said he wants to manage the club one day. He's often said that. Yeah. And I never got a chance to meet him when he was at Ipswich. He's a Finnish international as well. Yeah, and he had quite an interesting career as well. He kind of bounced around leagues and played for various teams, various different places. So he's one I'd like to sit down and have a chat with.
Yeah, mate. No, I can 100% see where you're coming from with that. I think that's a worthy number 5 for yourself there. So your Europa League spot then, Matt. Who are you going for, mate?
For my number 5, I have picked the current manager of the Premier League winners, Jurgen Klopp.
Okay.
So he did make it higher because you know when like you've got that boss at work that you know's a good laugh on a night out, but because it's work on the Christmas do, they don't really let it slip. They come for a drink and they have a good chat, but they don't really let it go. I feel like he would a bit like that.
I feel like he'd let it go.
Do you reckon he'd let it go? Mate, I don't know.
He's actually my number 1.
Is he really?
He is. Yeah.
He's up there for me.
I just think that because he's both things. Like, he's good, interesting from a football perspective in the way he looks at the game, and I do think that you see
he's
some
a good guy.
Yeah, you see some of the celebrations after those like big wins that Liverpool have. There is like he's in and amongst it. He's not sitting on the sidelines. Like, he's like first to the bar.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the beer cellar, getting the steins in. Like, you can tell, like, he will be there, and he would be a good laugh, and he will.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no. That's what I mean by he's almost that parental supervisory figure, but you can't help but like them. He's the boss that everyone likes.
Yeah.
He's the boss that everyone wants, but no one has.
Yeah.
Right, so my number 5 I've already discussed. It was Zlatan. So, if we want to move into those Champions League spots, who is your 4th place, Simon?
So my Champions League spot is someone who regularly commentates on the Champions League. My favourite commentator by a mile, Peter Drury.
A fantastic commentator. I take it, you know, what would you want to say to Peter Drury? Would you ask advice, or would you ask him, you know, what his trail of thought is during a game? How would you approach that?
All of the above. Obviously, people may not know, I do kind of voluntary commentary for Ipswich Hospital Radio, and it's bloody difficult. Like, you think commentary is so easy, but when you've got to continually talk and come up with insight and create an atmosphere, it's really hard to kind of feel like you've got to feed an emotion through the television or through radio or through whatever means you're on. And I just think he nails it.
I completely get where you're coming from, because even doing something like this where we're not even describing something, we're just having a chat, but we're having to do more than just that, if that makes sense. It's not just that. That in itself is kind of difficult enough. Never mind watching 22 players kick a ball about and accurately describe the action whilst keeping the audience engaged. It's definitely an art. There's definitely an art to that, which he is an absolute master of.
I mean, the snippet that always gets me when I listen to him, and I listen to the commentary over and over again, is that Roma goal against Barcelona when Manolas scores. You
almost don't really associate, at least not many commentators, with that, but it's poetry, you know. Yeah,
because he talks about Manolas, the Greek god from Mount Olympus, coming to the 7 hills of Rome and delivering a miracle. I'm like, so I say, in the heat of a moment, in the heat of a battle, I mean, I don't know how much you prepare. That's one thing I would like to know, is whether he prepares any of those lines.
You know, even if he does, I don't really think that should...
No, it shouldn't take it away. Of course it shouldn't. But I would like to know, because if he's come up with that on the fly, in the moment, bloody hell, the man deserves a medal. I mean...
I imagine the Roma-Barcelona one, he probably did, because going into that game, nobody would have thought that game was going to end up like that.
And Manolas as well. I mean, It's not like he was expected to score, is it? the last person you'd expect to score that goal. So I think that probably was done, and that's what I mean. The ability to capture a moment, and obviously the moment stands on its own, but the commentary almost elevates it another level.
It does. I agree.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I just think the ability to capture a moment and knowing when to, because I think sometimes commentators go a bit early, like they'll go like ballistic at a goal, which isn't that important in the end.
Yeah.
He seems to know the important goal and when he needs to big the moment up and when it's just kind of keep it level, keep it kind of standard. Because that's what elevates the big moments. You need to be able to capture it right at the right time.
Was he a player? Or
No, he's always been a commentator.
Oh.
But he's commentated on everything. Champions League, World Cups.
Yeah, of
Like,
course. I just didn't know what
No,
his
but
background was.
What I'm saying is, like, I bet he's got so many different stories of every game. And I bet he could tell you every game he's commentated on, what the score was, who scored. I imagine he's got that kind of mindset. And I would just love to know, like, kind of what's his favourite game to commentate on. What's his process, I guess, would be really interesting. And I think he's just, but like far and away for me, he's the best commentator in world football.
I actually agree 100%. I think he's absolutely brilliant. And one of his favourite commentaries for me, it wasn't even not even a proper game, but when Mark Noble had his testimonial, BT Sport were the channel that were airing it, and he was commentator on that. And it just, again, like the whole feel-good factor, it just elevated it even so, because you could tell he was so invested in what is effectively the celebration of a great player or a great player's time at a club. And as I said, I think the job of a commentator isn't just to describe what's going on, but it's also to tell a story, and it's also to make the audience feel like they are a part of it. And, that it's something more than what's just happening on a screen in front of them.
I mean, if you just said what's happened, particularly in the era of TV, it's pointless. People can see what happened. You need to have something more about you, and that's why I love that Manolas moment, because it elevated what was already a great thing and a great moment to watch and made it better.
No, I agree.
That's what commentators need to do.
For me as well, because obviously the one that really sort of glares with me, that really for me shows that BT Sport should make him their main guy, was the Bale goal against Liverpool in the Champions League final. And for me, I think Stephen Fletcher, I don't want to hammer the guy too harshly, but I do think he's just...
But you're going to.
Yeah, I think he's fucking mediocre at best, to be honest with you, as a commentator.
I'm not going to hammer him, but he's fucking mediocre.
Yeah, but no, honestly. And it just, that Bale goal, incredible. It's one of the best goals ever scored in the history of football in my eyes. And he's just gone with his usual line of, "Oh, that is sensational," or something like that. And I'm thinking, man, come on, is that really, in the Champions League final, it would be one thing if he did that in, the Group A game 1 or 2, and you go, oh, that's sensational, whatever. But the Champions League final, man, that's the best goal in a Champions League final since Zidane. That's, pretty much won Real Madrid that Champions League. Yeah, and you just, I feel like that's really the best you can come up. Whereas that, the Peter Jury would have, just made poetry of something like that. So, for me, BT Sport, if you are listening, make him your number one guy. That's just...
And Peter, if you want to come on.
We're
here for you.
Yeah, exactly. You're more than welcome. So, okay, great Champions League spot from Simon there, number 4. Rolling into your Champions League spot, Matt, who are you going with?
My number 4 was Alex Scott.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right, then.
Moving swiftly on to you.
Yep, so my number 4, funnily enough, it's currently a pundit at the minute, and I feel like this one is going to kind of maybe divide a few people. Personally, I think he's one of the best in the business right now. I've gone with Gary Neville. So, obviously, he's been on Sky Sports for about 10 years or so now, roughly that, and I just think that in terms of punditry, don't get me wrong, I know Man United comes up, and whenever he does commentate on a game, especially when he's commentating on Manchester United, people do, maybe throw accusations of bias or...
Correct accusations, George. You've got the correct.
But to be fair, though, I never feel like, at least in terms of Manchester United, I never feel like he's ever bigging them up to more than what they are, or...
But sometimes he doesn't pull them down.
No, but to be honest with you, I think he does. I think when they're bad, I think he I think he lets you know that he's bad, and I think sometimes so much so that he's almost going overboard sometimes.
I mean, the thing he's always said that he would never like throw people under the bus.
Yeah.
He's always said that like he's never going to call for manager's head, which is kind of I think what you're alluding to. Like he maybe could have pressured Ollie more and that kind of thing. But I kind of
he should still pressure Ollie more.
But I kind of admire that as a pundit to be like,
I do as well.
No, let's look at the game. Let's look at the team. What the team doing?
Yeah,
because that's what they're paid to do. They're not media people. They're there to give an expert opinion, not.
Exactly, and not just that though, but Gary Neville also, he was a teammate of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's. He knows Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, you know, on a somewhat personal basis, even if they're not talking all the time or whatever. I know you've got to be neutral and you've got to give your point of view on Sky and whatever, but I feel like, how can you then go and throw someone under the bus that you've spent, you know, like 10 years with as a teammate a little bit? It's a bit of a...
I'd do it if it was you, George.
Oh, yeah, of course. I wouldn't blame you, to be honest with you. But it's a bit of an interesting position to be in. And as I said, to be fair, I think, and outside of the Manchester United stuff, I think when he talks tactics and when he talks, you know, mindset, you know, he was great. I think it was early in the year when there was that discussion of racism. And obviously, and then, you know, I think the presenter then cut him off and was basically like, oh, this is the opinion of Gary Neville and not the opinion of Sky. You know, I just thought that was fantastic, personally, at least from what Gary Neville was saying, not how Sky responded to it. And yeah, no, as I said, I just think tactically, when he talks about teams on Sky, I think more often than not, he's normally spot on.
But that's what makes it even more baffling, that he failed so miserably as a manager.
I was surprised. To be fair, I would love to speak to him about that, his time at Valencia, because when that was announced, don't get me wrong, he was hired because the owner of Valencia knew him personally. So that's really how he got his foot in the door.
Wasn't Phil the assistant there?
Yeah, Phil Neville was also the assistant with him. And I think for them, at least from what I've seen in interviews since, a big part was, funnily enough, the language barrier. I think that was a big issue for them. But yeah, given what I'd seen from him as a pundit, I was thinking, oh, well, if he's anywhere near as good as being a manager as he's a pundit, I thought he'd do all right. But obviously that went tits up. And, you know, but no, I just think, you know, from his entire career at Manchester United, you know, we were talking about arrogance and mentality earlier as far as, say, Zlatan Ibrahimovic was concerned, and obviously we were also speaking about Ronaldo and Messi and how they push each other. Gary Neville, spent the best part of 2 decades playing for a team that continuously was, let's go again, let's win another trophy, let's go again, we're not going to rest on our laurels. And don't get me wrong, there was always a couple years here and there where they didn't win anything for whatever reason, whether that be, you know, a slight transitional period or whatever. But ultimately, when you look at his medal collection and the medal collection of the majority of his teammates that were around for the same length of time, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And yeah, as I said, I just think not only from a Manchester United perspective, but also from a TV pundit / personality perspective, I think he'd give you some real interesting insight. So yeah, for me, my first Champions League spot, number 4, Gary Neville for me. That's who I'm going with.
Okay, yeah, my number 3, we talked about Jurgen Klopp. I'm going to go for his great adversary, Pep Guardiola.
I did consider him.
Yeah, this isn't one that necessarily is about, I think he'd be particularly fun guy. I would love to pick his brains for 2 hours and just talk football with him continuously to kind of to see how his mind works and focuses on a game and how he sees football. He sees football differently to normal people. And I would just love to know how kind of he gets there. I mean, he's a genius and he's changed the face of football forever, probably at this point. Everyone now tries to play like Pep Guardiola's Manchester City and Barcelona. That's kind of how it goes. But just the way... As I say, I mean, again, and I think back to, I've watched that All or Nothing Manchester City documentary, and I remember there was this great moment where he talked to Kevin De Bruyne at half-time against Leicester, and he goes, look, Kevin, there's this little pocket of space. If you utilise that, I think we can utilise that space really well, and you can get a shot off. And they score in the second half using that exact thing. It's like the ability to see that in the pressure of a moment, to communicate that effectively and for it to come off. I think shows what a brilliant manager he is and what a great tactician he is.
It's almost, I feel like from a philosophical perspective, I think he's right up there. And along with Klopp, I really did consider him as well. As you said, just to be able to pick his brain, I feel like it is footballing genius. And I feel like I almost want to delve into the sort of wavelength that he's on, because I feel like he's out on his own there. I feel like at least the way he thinks in football, I don't think anyone else in football thinks the way that he does at all.
No, I agree. He vibrates on a different frequency to everyone else.
Yeah,
and that's the mark of genius, isn't it? And he's had the success of doing it, so he's got kind of that whole career of
exactly.
People, obviously, throw the accusation of he's always had money, he's always had a great team. He's made great teams better. Like he has made very good teams that much better, and he's improved every team he's been at.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think it's such a lazy argument, and it's one that until he won the title with Man City, or at least was going to win the title with Man City, obviously they won it comfortably that year, they got 100 points, but before that I was a Guardiola doubter. I always kind of went, oh, well, he needed Messi, Xavi and Iniesta. He got lucky with those players coming through. And I thought, and then he's gone to Bayern Munich, had won the treble before he got there. And obviously at City, he has obviously had loads of money to spend. But when you look at what he gets out of those players, because, people talk about money, and yes, obviously having money helps, especially when, arguably, I'd say money is probably the name of the game today. Especially when it's being invested properly. Whereas, you look at, say, a team like Manchester United that have thrown loads of money since Ferguson left, and it's all been a bit of a mess because they've just been throwing it at the wall and hoping it sticks. Whereas with Manchester City, for the most part, you kind of get the feel that there's been a proper plan in place, and that has as much been part of the reason why they've been successful as it is as just throwing the money. Any idiot at a football club, it can spend, if they've got the money, any idiot can spend billions if they want to, but for me, what, say, Guardiola has done with the likes of Raheem Sterling, those kind of, obviously, like Leroy Sané, the levels that he's got, look what he's done with Sergio Aguero. Sergio Aguero was a world-class player before Pep Guardiola arrived. And then he's obviously he's getting a little bit older now, but he also got him to do the running that he wouldn't do before. I feel like people underestimate his coaching ability because of the money. When, yes, okay, he does have resources that certain managers don't, but I guarantee that he gets more out of it. If you all gave the managers the same resources, I imagine he would still get more out of his players than probably almost any other manager in the league, maybe barring Klopp.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you talk about the money they have, they do throw a lot of money at it, but I don't think there's a player who's come in who hasn't improved. Even though they are world-class players when they sign them, they spend 80, 60, 70 million on them.
Kevin
they come
De Bruyne.
in and suddenly their levels up again. They go up and up and up.
Yeah, Kevin De Bruyne. When you look at that Man City side,
Kevin De Bruyne is a great example.
You could argue that they were maybe punching, maybe they weren't hitting the heights they should have been when he came in. They'd won the title in 2014 and then hadn't won, didn't win it again until 2018. And I would argue in that time period, they probably had, on paper, the best team. I think they were better. They were certainly better than the Leicester team that won the league, and I think they were better than the Chelsea teams that won it in 2015 and 2017. On paper, anyway, their squad. And when you look at you just look at the levels that, say, Kevin De Bruyne has raised himself to. I think Mahrez is a better player than he was when he walked through the door. I think Kyle Walker, I know that obviously sometimes his form can dip a little bit, but for me, I think he's progressed levels than from where he was when he first walked through the door, having come from Spurs. And as I said, I think for me, I think just saying, he's got the money, I think it's such a lazy argument when you can clearly see he gets so much from his players. I think he gets more from his players than what possibly any other manager could get, in my opinion. So I'm a big believer in Pep Guardiola now. I wasn't, and then he won the league at City, and it en route to doing that, it changed my mind completely. So I think that's a great shout there, Simon. So going on to you then, Matt, who would you have for your spot?
For number 3,
Mm-hmm.
It's already been said, Gary Lineker.
Oh, okay. Great shout.
He's my godfather. He just doesn't know.
Yeah, all right, that's fair enough. We like Gary Lineker. All right, then strolling on to my automatic Champions League place, I am going for Sir Geoff Hurst, which, only man to have scored a hat-trick in the World Cup in a World Cup final, absolute West Ham and England legend. Obviously he's getting on a little bit now, but I'd really just like to sit down and just have a chat with him about England and the whole World Cup and everything really. He just seems like such a gentleman as well, to be honest. He'd be Geoff Hurst to me would be a dream. His goal record at West Ham was phenomenal as well. An FA Cup.
Our only successful period.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, just for me, as I said, an absolute gentleman, legendary figure in English football and West Ham. It would just be an absolute.
So Simon, number 2.
So my number 2 would probably have been more fun 20 years ago. And he would have been a great night out back then. But he would still be great to talk to now, Paul Gascoigne. And I know we talked about him before.
Yeah.
But I would like everybody who's ever been around Gazza has a Gazza story. Everybody, like without fail, who's ever played with him, they've all got one, at least one. And I'd love to have my own Gazza story one day. That would be the dream. But his career, I'd love to talk to him about his career and why he never really got to where he probably should have done. Again, he's another one who played under Bobby Robson, and I'd love to hear his views on that as well, because Bobby Robson was a legend and one of my favourite people in football. But yeah, I think Gazza, he's just mad as a box of frogs. Like he's just absolutely bonkers. And I think even if he didn't, I know he doesn't drink anymore, but I think even not drinking, I reckon he's still bloody hilarious.
Yeah,
that would be really funny to talk to. But it's not just that. Like obviously, I say he's had a good career, could have been better, but I'd love to talk to him about Italia '90. Would be. And his thoughts, I know obviously they didn't make the final in the end, but his thoughts when he got that yellow card and how gutted that must have been and how well he played that tournament, and if he had missed the final, how that would have affected him. I like him as a guy. It seems like a very nice man, and as I say, I would just love to just sit down and have a few beers with him, which obviously he doesn't do anymore, but...
Iconic person, iconic figure. 100% get. I did consider Gascoigne, to be honest with you, just because for pretty much every reason why you said Italia '90. The stories. I feel like he's one of those people that I look at least that I've seen obviously in the media, that I kind of think he's very unique, very very unique. I really can't think of another kind of personality that's really remotely close to Gazza for me. So yeah, I 100% get where you're coming from, and he was somebody that I really did consider for my list as well. So I think that's a great runner-up, Paul Gascoigne. So who would you say, who is your runner-up then, Matt? Who you got? Who's your number 2 spot?
My number 2 spot goes to Peter Crouch.
That's a big shout for number 2.
It's definitely influenced by his podcast.
Don't listen to it. It's crap. It's really bad. Listen to this one. It's much better.
But so does his podcast.
Time around. Hopefully in a year's time, his head will be in my fridge. So yeah. But go on it, Matt. Elaborate.
Before you do that, can you invite him round?
We'll have him on the podcast.
We'll have him on. That's what we invite him in subtly, and then we'll murder him.
Yeah. He's not going to come now. You said that.
Oh no! I'm giving the game away.
But no, yeah, he's just he's a character that I think obviously, and he has seen a huge amount of the game, and moreover, he's got a lot of good connections outside of football, which I think a night out with him would be. Well, I mean, you can't miss the bloke, can you? And he'd probably lose me a couple times, but.
Classic little and large combination.
Oh mate, could you imagine? Oh god, it'd be like talking to Hagrid. But apart from that, no, I reckon it'd be a pretty good night out.
I agree. I mean,
a couple of Guinnesses.
No, he doesn't seem to be a Guinness guy.
No, he is a Guinness guy.
He's a Guinness guy. He's gone down in my estimation after that. No, I think Crouchy, he seems very open. I mean, you listen to his podcast, he tells every story. Like, nothing, no holes barred. Like, you could ask him anything and he would give you the straight story.
Yeah.
And I think that would be really, like, he'd be really interesting to speak to in that kind of respect. And he's played for some big teams. Like, I know everyone talks about him like as a little bit of a joke. So obviously he's like the 6'7", all good touch for a big man.
Yeah.
He played for Liverpool. He played for Spurs. Like, this is a guy who's
he went to a Champions League final. Like, it's not a joke. No.
He's got a very solid career behind him. And
Yeah.
Very, very good player, as well as being a very funny guy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. You know how we were kind of talking earlier about someone's public persona in comparison to what their private persona is? I imagine that Crouch is very much one and the same. What you see on telly is the kind of guy that he is in real life. And for that, I kind of respect. I think that's a great way to be. And, you know, I feel like he doesn't take himself too seriously, which is always a good thing. And I just feel like he comes across very down to earth, like a good guy. So, yeah, I think that is a good shout, Peter Crouch, to be honest with you.
So, George, who's your number 2?
My number 2, right, so my number 2 is at number 2 purely because I have already met them once, but it was very, very briefly when I was about 13, 14, something like that. Yeah, so it was very brief, and had I not met them briefly, they would have been my number 1. I've gone with my king, Mark Noble. That's who I've gone with as my number 2.
He's my number 1.
Is he your number 1? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we can cover him. We can cover him now then. So yeah, Mark Noble, obviously West Ham boy through and through. Been at the club since day dot for him basically. Just an absolute legend, given everything that he could to the club. Something that I did really, really heightens him in my eyes is that when we were relegated, him and along with a couple other players, there were links to other clubs, and rather than potentially go to another Premier League club, he decided to stay at West Ham and have his wages cut in half, which that's really, I think that's just a fantastic thing to do. It shows real loyalty and at the very least happiness in where you are at that point. And just one of my favourite days in football was his testimonial being there. It did help that was probably the only ever time that I was in the corporate seats at Upton Park. But no, it was...
Posh seats.
Yeah, the posh seats, basically. But it was just... And that was how Sir Trevor Brooking ended up sat next to me for the first half of the football.
George, if you could only ask him one question, what is it?
Did you learn everything you know about football during your 1-month loan spell at Ipswich in 2007?
Yes.
Funnily enough, that wouldn't be my one question. I almost feel like I don't have one question for him. I don't know. Maybe it'd be something.
I've got one. Let me say.
Okay.
My one question is it as much as a shit show internally as it looks from the outside? Because as much as I hate the board, and we could make a series dedicated to how much I hate that board.
I listened to many conversations in the pub.
Yeah. Is it a perception thing? Do they just look incompetent? And George, I don't want to get you started on this. Cause
we're nearly at 2 hours,
yeah,
George.
We're at 2 hours. We would be at 7. But you get what I mean.
I didn't want to bring the mood down.
He's someone that's openly gone out and spoke against the board. And he could do that because he has a privileged position, in West Ham's light. You could burn a eulogy of Bobby Moore, and most West Ham fans would be like, "Yeah, fuck it, it's alright, it's Mark Noble." So he is Mr. West Ham, but that's what I would really want to know.
I get where you're coming from with that question, and it's certainly something that I would want to discuss with him. And I know obviously he did effectively slam the sow of Dean Garner on Twitter. He did publicly slam that, but I imagine that the answer that he would give to that would be very different depending on whether he was still at the club in any capacity. Like for me personally, when he retires, and obviously I feel like he's going to have options when he does retire, but I feel like he could easily become a Sky pundit in the sense that he already seems to have a really good relationship with them. Whenever we play, they always seem to interview him very often. And I know he's the club captain, but they do almost seem to know him on an almost personal level, which kind of bodes well. And I feel like if he wasn't still affiliated with the club at that point, I feel like the answer he would give would be very different than if he was either still playing for West Ham or at West Ham in some kind of coaching or background capacity. So yeah, I think the answer he would give to that would be very different. But I 100% get why you would ask that question, because yeah, you know, for me, I think we all, at least externally, we all think it's a bit of a fucking shit show. So I can't imagine what it would be like internally. I feel like there's probably be an entire layer that the rest of us don't get to see there.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, that's a great number 2 then. So are we then moving on to the number 1s now? I think we've
Yeah.
right then. So Simon, your top spot. Did you say it was Jurgen Klopp?
It was Jurgen Klopp, or is still Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, he is Jurgen Klopp. Yeah.
I admit he probably is higher than most people would have him. I'm not a Liverpool fan, but I don't know. Just something. It's something about the guy.
He's a character.
I feel like he would probably change your outlook on life if you met him. Do you know what I mean?
Possibly.
He would somehow motivate you to be better and completely change. Like he would be like the motivation to be the best version of yourself, kind of thing. And I know it sounds a bit stupid, but I do think like he seems to, around his teams, they seem to create an ethos of togetherness and just drive that is fantastic.
I think that's what's the core of it. I think people want to perform for him.
But I think he believes in all of everyone that he like chooses as his guys. Like he will back them to the hillside.
Yeah.
And I feel like having him as an influence on yourself would be massive. Like I feel like he'd have such an impact on you that he would just be great just to be around for any length of period.
Yeah. So we've done our 1 and 2, George. Who's your number 1?
All right, my number 1. I have gone with the West Ham legend that is Colton Cole.
Colton Cole.
Always believe in your soul. But yeah, no, I've gone with Cole. I'm not going to sing the whole song because I don't feel like our listeners need that. But yeah, as I said,
that can be an additional extra. If you want to listen to that, leave a comment.
Yeah,
George sings Cole.
It can be a bonus. It can be a bonus episode. I'll sing the whole gold song, but I'll be replacing it with Colton Cole instead. But yeah, so Colton Cole, as I said, it would have been Mark Noble would have been my number 1, but I did meet him at like a West Ham signing once when I was about 13 or so. So no, I've gone with Colton Cole just because I absolutely love the guy to bits. Absolutely love the guy. You talk about, and I feel like his loyalty to the club is. I appreciate it so much because, you know, he came through the ranks at Chelsea. So unlike Mark Noble, it's not like he was at the club, you know, his whole life. It's not like he came through the academy and has that family link to West Ham in the same way that Mark Noble does. But he's almost like the club's adopted son in the sense, Colton Cole. You know,
we love him.
Yeah, we absolutely love him. He scored.
I mean, he's a cult hero, isn't he?
Complete cult hero.
Like, he's not a legend. He's a cult figure. Like, people just love him.
Yeah.
Despite him not being amazingly good.
Well, the thing that I always loved about Colton Cole was, you know, how much he tried, how much he wanted to be there. And there was obviously a point when he was breaking into the England squad around 2009, 10, that kind of time. And then when we got relegated, like with Mark Noble, I think there was an option for him to go to Stoke. I remember hearing reports that they were interested, and obviously they would have kept him on the wages that he'd been on in the Premier League the year before. And he chose to stay at West Ham, and, you know, because he wanted, you know, he felt that it was his home, basically. Helped get us back to the Premier League, scored a fair few goals in the Championship that year, and then also scored in the playoff final as well. We got the first goal. And it's always great because I think after that game, he put on Twitter, he was like, people told me to leave, but, you know, you can all go fuck yourselves. I love it here. It was something along those lines. And even as much as recently, shortly after the lockdown, after the restart, we were playing Chelsea and we won that game 3-2. And Sky Sports were basically showing that game. They were showing, like, Colton Cole, Stephen Sidwell, there might have been one other player reacting to the game. And obviously, you know, he still respects Chelsea, of course, having come through their ranks. But when we scored the winner, he was celebrating. And a few Chelsea fans on Twitter called him out and were like, why are you celebrating? You came for our ranks. And he was just like, well, no, you know, like West Ham's my club. He was like, I'll always have a place for Chelsea in my heart, but it was like, West Ham's my club, it's my home, it's, you know, and then he was like, I helped get them to the Premier League as well. He was like, I want them to stay there. And yeah, so, you know, and for me as well, you know, he's also become a bit of a personality on things like Talk Sport and that, and he seems like a bit of a laugh as well outside of the West Ham stuff.
Yeah.
You know, that would be...
Yeah. He's definitely on my list. I think there were a few others that were kind of outside. Like, I tried to not make it not so much West Ham, but that was a great shout, mate.
Yeah, I agree. That was the kind of thing, I didn't want to make it too West Ham oriented, but yeah, Mark Noble and Colton Cole, I was kind of like, yeah, I've got to have these guys on there. So yeah, that is our list. Right then, Simon, would you like to go through your top 10 once again, please, mate?
I sure would. Number 10, Luke Chambers. 9, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. 8, Cristiano Ronaldo. 7, Gary Lineker. Number 6, Jose Mourinho. Number 5, Sheki Kuchi. Number 4, Peter Drury. Number 3, Pep Guardiola. 2, Paul Gascoigne. And top of the tree, Jurgen Klopp.
Lovely stuff. And Matt, your top 10?
10, Neil Warnock. 9, Jose Mourinho. Number 8, Troy Deeney. 7, Jack Grealish. 6, Declan Rice. 5, Klopp. 4, Alex Scott. 3, Gary Lineker. 2, Peter Crouch. And number 1, Mark Noble.
Lovely stuff. And my top 10. Number 10, Lionel Messi. 9, Pele. 8, the Soccer Saturday lads, brackets, Paul Merson. 7,
Cheating.
Alex Scott. 6, Sam Allardyce. 5, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. 4, Gary Neville. 3, Sir Geoff Hurst. 2, Mark Noble. And number 1, Colton Cole. That's the final whistle. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Midtable and Up podcast. If you enjoy our top 10 lists, please make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Let us know what you would have done differently. If you watch this episode on YouTube, make sure to put your foot through that subscribe button and leave a like on the video, as well as follow us on Spotify and the podcasts app to keep up to date with the series. Thank you very much. See you next time.